everyone, today we're going to be making bone broth. So I usually make my bone broth in my Instant Pot, which is right back here. I know that you can make it in a stock pot and you can let it simmer on your stove all day. I think there's a way to make it in the crock pot. I'm just gonna show you how to do it on the Instant Pot because I have one and it makes it go so much quicker, and so I feel like that's way easier to be using my Instant Pot. Why bone broth? So if you're at this video, maybe you're like, I know the benefits of it and I really wanna be making it. Why bone broth? It's so good for you and it has so many different nutrients. It's rich in like magnesium and calcium, all sorts of different things that our bodies need. Like if someone were to come to me and they would be like, hey, I wanna eat healthier, I wanna like live healthier, what can I do in the kitchen? These different ways of like getting healthier. I would say right under, like my number one thing would be like spend 30 minutes a day in the kitchen. If you can commit to that, you're going to eat more nourishing foods. If you spend 30 minutes at least a day in your kitchen making your own things. But like right under that, I would put make your own bone broth because it is just so good for you. It is so good to have on hand. It is the first thing I do if anyone in my house is sick or is like, oh, I'm starting to feel just a little run down. I'm like, oh, get out the bone broth. Let me just make you a bowl for lunch or whatever. So we're having bone broth. I will give it to postpartum friends. I will give it to pregnant friends. I will give it to sick friends. It is amazing. And if you're a woman and you try to eat with your cycle, like those warming, nourishing foods when it is your time of the month, so good for you. There's a slew of reasons why it's amazing for you. Why not buy it boxed? Well, the boxed ones in the stores, as like many other things that are just like shelf stable, it's not gonna be as nutrient rich. I know that there are good brands out there. I know like Kettle and Fire, I think that's a pretty good brand. I haven't done research on the different types of bone broth in a really long time, but I remember like a couple years ago when I did, Kettle and Fire was a good one. But they're expensive, they're so expensive. It's so much more cost effective to make your own and it will be so much more nourishing. So basically when you're cooking, when you're making bone broth, animal bones have, or I guess any bones, we're not using human bones today. Animal bones have collagen in them. And so when you cook it down, that collagen cooked down becomes gelatin, and that gelatin is so good for you. So when you make your bone broth and you put it, if you were to like take the whole pot of it, put it in the fridge, and then take it back out once it's like all the way cooled, it will look like a bowl of Jell-O if your bones were very good bones, because that is all the gelatin just like hanging out in there. It's like jiggles around. Super gross, actually. Bone broth is amazing for you. So let's get into the ingredients that I'm going to use. And I should also add the caveat of I have made bone broth for years. And only recently, this year, did I find a recipe where I was like, oh my gosh, this actually tastes good. I can use this not just in soup. Like I was just kind of throwing my broth in soup because chickeny or like it just didn't taste good. It was like bland. I couldn't just eat it alone. I would like really envy these people that could just like have a cup of bone broth. I'm like, that's gross. It doesn't taste good. Turns out I did not have a great recipe. But this recipe I've been doing for a little while now, probably since right after Ellis was born, so maybe like in the springtime of this year. So this will be good you could just sip it right from a cup or a bowl. Sometimes I'll just like have extra rice prepared and I'll just like throw rice in the bowl of broth so like your spoon has something to like catch on to. I like to eat it with a spoon as opposed to drinking it. This recipe will taste good for just eating it alone, which can be a big deal. Things I'm gonna be using, these are your ingredients. Bones, you're gonna need beef, chicken. I know people use chicken feet. There's like, you could literally just kind of throw anything in there. I have not experimented with any pork bones, but I'm sure that it would be just as nutritious for you. So I'm gonna be using today some beef bones, and then I also have some chicken that anytime I'll make like a whole chicken, I will always save the bones and keep them in the freezer and just like in this bag. So I'll just like stash it in the bag until I have the time to make the bone broth or I'm ready to go. And I will buy my bones from a butcher. There's like multiple butchers around here. So I'll just go in, grab a bag. They're usually like anywhere from like 10 to 15 bucks for, how much does this weigh? This is almost 3.5 pounds. So this bag is almost 3.5 pounds of marrow bones, and it was $11. So it's not, I'm gonna say $11 is what you're gonna buy. You're gonna pay for a really good quality, shelf-stable bone broth that you're gonna throw into a soup. So you're gonna have an $11 soup, whereas this, I'm gonna get 2 batches out of this probably, and it's gonna be so much better for me. And it's gonna give me a couple quarts. Way more cost effective to be doing this way, to be making your own. So today I'm using beef and chicken. That's what I'm trying to say. So I'm gonna be using beef and chicken bones. I am going to be using some ghee, which is like a clarified butter. So ghee is awesome to cook with. This is just like a random side note. If you are ever sauteing or you're roasting anything in the oven, no olive oil, butter, no butter, because it has a low smoke point, which basically just means it's gonna get really hot really quick. Its smoke point is like its hottest point before it starts to break down. So ghee has a very high smoke point. Other oils like avocado oil, those have a higher smoke point. And so I'll always, if I'm sauteing anything, I'll be cooking with those, because the minute you see smoke, you are dealing with the oil breaking down, and then you have free radicals, which is like really not great for your body. So anyway, I'm gonna be using ghee because I'm gonna be sauteing. Also, I'll add all this in the description below, so you don't need to be like taking notes. I'll write it down. 2 carrots, or the baby carrot equivalent, which is what I have today. A yellow onion, 2 to 3 celery sticks. The organic celery that I get is so small, so I'm always throwing a little extra celery in there. I feel like it tastes so good. A whole clove of garlic, delicious. So cloves, I'm using cloves today. The recipe that I originally found was called for whole star anise. Anise? I don't really know how to say it. I know it has like a licorice-y flavor. Kind of. I looked it up. I'm like, what can I use as a substitute? I went to go buy it one time and I'm like, this is so expensive and I would only be using it for my broth. So I'm just going to use cloves, and I've done that and it tastes delicious. Bay leaves, cinnamon sticks, apple cider vinegar, and water, salt, pepper, and that's it. I think that's it. So step 1, you're gonna blanch your bones. So you have a pot, you're gonna put your bones in there, you're gonna fill it with water to cover those bones with cold water, put it on your stove, let it boil. Let it boil there for like 10 to 15 minutes, then you're gonna drain it. So that step just gets rid of all the, I don't know, the stuff that will float to the top of the water when you are dealing with bones. So I know that that's an optional step. The next step, which is sauteing, you can skip all that. You can literally just throw everything in a pot together and go for it. But this is the way where you're not gonna have anything floating on top that you don't want, and it just tastes so good. I think the sauteing, it adds an extra step. So yeah, that's step 2. You're gonna saute your veggies. While those bones are blanching, go ahead and saute your veggies. That is, you're gonna throw them in your Instant Pot. You're gonna turn to saute, you're gonna throw it in your Instant Pot and put a little bit of that ghee in there. Your onion, carrots, celery, garlic, throw those veggies in there. Give them a saute. Then, once those are done, take them out of the Instant Pot, set them aside. Take those blanched bones that you had and saute those just for a little bit. You're gonna get like a brown char when you saute them in the pot, and then like whatever's left there, you kind of like scrape up, and that'll be in your bone broth. And I honestly think it makes it taste better. I skipped this a few times, and I'm like, I did miss it. Such a weird step, and it smells bad to me. I started making bone broth when I was pregnant, and with butcher bones, like with bones that were like from outside my house, and holy smokes, I just like, my nose gets so strong when I'm pregnant. The smell is not my favorite, but that's the only like weird smelling part, the blanching and then the sauteing the bones. After that, when your broth is cooking, it just smells like the delicious, spicy, garlicky, cinnamon, so good. Step 4. You're gonna add all your ingredients to your Instant Pot. You're gonna pressure cook that on high for 3 hours and then allow the natural release. So what's crazy is 3 hours is actually a very short amount of time. Bone broth it takes time. It's like low and slow is the name of the game, because it takes time to get all that good nutrients. Like the longer you can let it simmer. I know people that have like let it do all day and night, like just to get everything they could out of those bones. Honestly, 3 hours is enough to get really rich bone broth in an Instant Pot. So that's very cool to use your Instant Pot if you have one. Step 6, you're gonna strain it through a cheesecloth or a fine mesh strainer. Then you're gonna go ahead and transfer all of that to your refrigerator and allow time for it to cool. And once it cools, the fat is gonna come to the top of the pot. There's gonna be like a layer of, I don't know, it's like a light colored layer. That's the fat layer. You can go ahead and scrape some of that off. If you leave it all on there, your broth will be very oily when you go to eat it or use it in a soup. And honestly, maybe that's your preference. Maybe you really like that really oily stuff. But I like to keep some of it, but most of it will go. Then it's not too buttery of a broth for me. And so also when it's in that state, you can acknowledge the beautiful jiggly broth. It is so full of nutrients. And from there, it's honestly easier in that state, I think, to scoop into quart-size Ziploc baggies. That's how I'll store it. I try not to do too much plastic in our house, but that's just one thing where I'm like, this is just way better. I can prep so many more healthy foods in plastic, put them in those Ziploc bags, store them flat, so freeze it flat. Put it in the quart-size bag, make sure you label like beef and chicken bone broth, frozen this date. I will lay it down in the quart-size baggies, and you can stack them in your freezer let them freeze, then you can stand them up and store them however you'd like in there. Give them to a friend. It's a perfect size. It's the perfect size to just like quick thaw it in a bowl for lunch. And yeah, you just repeat as needed as whenever you run out. So I forgot to mention that this batch I'm making, this will be like probably 2 batches that I'm gonna be doing of this bone broth. And I will, when I do the next batch, I will also do a fresh onion, carrot, celery, like the fresh ingredients of the veggies. I think is more flavorful if you do that. I've tried to recycle them before and it's just like all the flavor gets taken out of them on that first batch. So I will put in new bones and repeat that, and I'm probably gonna get like 6 quarts, I would guess, out of these. That's that. It is so worth it. I totally recommend. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. I will try to answer those questions. And if you have any other tricks, I would love to hear how your bone broth turns out. Let me know them. Thanks for stopping by.